So thanks all of you, and for allowing me to share this time with you. And I'm just going to start because it's all preloaded, and it's best if I just start it. So my presentation today is about PhD by research is an exercise in not knowing what you don't know. It is, after all, a philosophy degree. Most would agree that taking on a PhD by research is no small decision in the light of the journey that has to be navigated, the various gates manoeuvred through, and the specific outcome to be achieved. I'm here to argue that the initial decision is definitely small in comparison to what comes after it. So what I wanted to start off with, and it's just moved ahead before I was ready for it. You don't know what you don't know at the beginning, and towards the end, you wouldn't suspect where you end up in your learning and in coming to understand and know. The journey to my in-candidature review in April of this year was a mixed bag of uncertainty, lack of confidence, and being lost in my head. And then the fog began to clear. So join me now as I discuss my experience of my still-to-be-finished PhD path, helpful hints that I found in hindsight while uncovering the 3 C's of certainty, confidence. So as part of my learning journey, I came to value this process of acknowledgement. Though not something that is done here in the US, it is a practice for Australia and other countries like Canada. So it's doubly important to me because it relates to my research inquiry as well directly, and I'll demonstrate this shortly. So I want to acknowledge and pay respect to the people of the Akikiso whose land I'm on today. I pay respect to the past, the present, and emerging elders, and the country that each of us lives on and is sustained by. I am mindful that within and outside the buildings, the country, the land always was and always will be Native American land. And so I'm here in Houston, in Northwest Houston, and that map just gives you an idea of where I am in terms of the big state of Texas. So let's start with an understanding of who I am for those who have not met me before. I started life as a high school teacher with a BA BPed from the University of Sydney. I was a high school teacher until the age of 35 in English and history, with a dash of religious education thrown in. And I had started my family. I dabbled in some consulting and undertook other non-degree education and certification in vocational education training, etc. I left teaching to move into corporate life, and I moved to the US for my work. So I'm not the trailing spouse. I was the spouse who had the work 15 years ago into the oil and gas industry in organisational development, HR, leadership and change. So a far cry from my school days. I'm currently studying my PhD by research to contribute to my work in diversity, equity and inclusion, which is one of the buzz terms of the world today. We also run a global non-profit called Lean In Networks Energy. So I'm currently studying my PhD. As I said before, I'm active in a lot of social media because of my volunteer work. So I was going to say to Mark, I've developed mentoring programs. Volunteer mentoring is key. So I know a lot about that stuff. If you wanted to have a chat, I'm happy to have a chat about anything to do with mentoring as well. So that's been key. If we can move on to the next one. So about 6 months into my study, I pronounced somewhat unashamedly to my supervisors, I figured out why I'm struggling in understanding. I'm undertaking a philosophy degree. And that was what I actually said to them. To those of you who are undertaking academic programs immediately following your undergraduate program, this may seem more than dull-witted on my behalf. For those who are stepping into academic after many years, for me more than 40 years, despite other types of training all through my career, this won't be an astonishing statement. That was amongst the earliest of my learnings. I've also been heard to espouse, if you could just forward again. I'm not an academic, all right? And the next one, the other statement, which I'm really going to lead with, I'm not a feminist, okay? So let's start with the last statement. So if you forward again, please. So within approximately 6 months of starting my program, I had adopted a feminist approach for my research, of seeking different knowledge and seeking knowledge differently. It was incredibly important for me to pursue this in my design, as I wanted to offer to the field of study, as we all do when we're researching, something original, new, different, and real. Although at the time I didn't really understand what being a feminist constituted, nor did I truly understand the methods of gaining knowledge and the nature of reality, respectively, epistemology and ontology. Click. First learning, don't expect to find gaps or new areas of offerings in the early days of your study. Everywhere I turned, I found things that I had thought would be original concepts already taken. Also, if you accept a designation, such as feminist, truly research what that means for you. It's a wide and deep field and impacts your research, where your theory comes from and the appropriate readings you can use. For example, the acknowledgement slide, click, I used initially, has significant relationship to the concept of women as subjugated and inferior in relation to my research, and is now used as an introduction to my research as well as an acknowledgement. So determining my analysis occurred, so when you have a look at the 3-year experience that I've had, when you look at the analysis, and I actually only uncovered it immediately prior to my in-candidature review, having gone through some other iterations of things with the help of my supervisors. And it was worth the wait. As you can see from the span of the years across my timeline, both my supervisors knew of my desire to be unconventional. More learning? Yes. PhD by research is a holistic concept, not merely relative to the specifics of your research topic, but in researching what research itself means. No coursework to guide you, just you, reading and more reading, writing and more writing, thinking and more thinking, then thinking again, and supervisors who give you just enough, or sometimes not enough, to go ahead with. Now, that is not a criticism, as it may have been in my first few months of my PhD. Click. So, about now, some of you are asking, well, what is your research about? Because I've had a very inauspicious beginning with this presentation, I can assure you. I'm an education faculty student, so it must be something to do with schools or students or teachers, right? Wrong. It is about the learning that occurs through stories of women and men pursuing their executive leadership careers through specific feminist concepts such as power, agency, difference, and resistance. I had not understood how my research topic is repeatedly crafted, redefined, and improved through the research process. And if you could click again, because even at my ICR, it was questioned, do I need to use androcentric workplace? This slide depicts, to this point, in the first instance, the shift between the COC research aim I had, which included specific questions not shown here, and the rethinking that was then applied to enhance the main research aim and refocus with 2 subsidiary questions in better alignment. As the arrow on the far left suggests, right on the end, if you can see it, that there were many more iterations of my research aim before this. And I hadn't expected that. I thought that you go in with one thing and you come out with it, but that wasn't the case. But through this process, I gained greater clarity and sharper focus. I also wanted to demonstrate here how my understanding and insight has revealed itself to me across the last 12 months, particularly part of the process of the PhD rigor. Here I have used reports of Click, SCU, that inform me as to the experience of the learning and unearthing of meaning, of moving from unconscious to consciousness, and the relationship and responsibility that was occurring through the process of my PhD. This wasn't just about reading hard, studying hard, thinking hard, and writing hard. It was really a whole almost transcendental process. It was a transcendence that occurred. Whilst the zoo had the relationship between the book itself, mine was between me and the research I was conducting. And I too was becoming inhabited by the consciousness. It was the transcendent, if you could click again, the transcendent constituted journey I had been reading about in relation to theory that was in reality occurring directly to me. I was becoming the embodiment of my research process. Click. I have been constantly reminded of the impact of my research on others in very real sense. Click. One of the three methods I use is personal journaling, a reflective process to engage the participants in developing a further understanding of their connections with the world of the workplace, which situates them in the context of this inquiry. For those of you who are involved in my type of work that I do and the research that I'm doing, you'll understand a lot of these, you'll know a lot of these words and how, for me, they've actually come to life through the process of the research. And one of the most important things is correlation between story and experience. Their ability, my participants' ability to make sense of their experiences really reflect on their gendered experience and raised awareness. And so I really found that the reflection of feminism, personally and socially, came to the fore. So one of the things that one of my participants, MW4, wrote was, I have to apologise in advance that this is a combination of rambling, of info, insights about my experience, and then some of what I might call more academic writing as I think about something. Maybe this is what journaling essentially is, but it feels all over the place for me. But most certainly this exercise forced me to think about some things that I never would have without this prompt. So thank you. So learning lesson, never doubt the impact that your research can have on others, even in the process. And I'm nearly getting to the end, so you'll be able to go for your coffees and I'll be able to go and have dinner. In my ICR, I had to consider the barriers, the issues, and the changes that have occurred in my research process to date. Click. Many lessons were learned here. So, for example, could you move it forward, please? Okay. I think I've lost you.
We're definitely here.
Okay, could you move the slide forward? Forward, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so during my ethics approval process, which was probably shorter than any sitting in the audience, I found a lot of downtime in the process, which also caused unnecessary frustration. I could have made better use of this time with more reading and writing, but you kind of get lost sometimes in that process and more angry with the process than you should be. At times, I've struggled with the difference between the reality of academia and my commercial experience. It's been a long time since I was in a classroom. Maintaining and even undertaking significant social media postings relevant to my research interests has kept me in touch with the topic of my research, put me in touch with experts and others working in the diversity, equity and inclusion agenda across the world, and set me up to operate with no downtime between my study period and my commercial work, even at my grand old age, and I'm in my 60s. I'm amazed at how the academic informs the commercial and has been, is, and will continue to be of real value to my future work. It will also assist me in the challenge of converting the academic into commercial relevance, such as authors that I use like Baxter, because academia, in my experience, hasn't always translated very well into my commercial understanding of the world and with the people that I work with. So it's really, that's one of the challenges that I face moving forward, that I have to make sure that it's, that I really am commercially oriented. I remain conscious of being aware of time for each element of the process. My methods are transcript and analysis heavy, and I'm using an emergent process called Feminist Post-Structuralist Discourse Analysis, FPDA for short, which relies on the researcher to create their own distinctive process, which is very rewarding but incredibly demanding. Lesson: be careful what you wish for. When you want to really achieve and do something different, then you might just get more than you bargained for in the process. However, I do feel I'm better placed now for my final 12 months. And I need to pay attention to regularly redrafting chapters. Changes. Be prepared that once you better understand your approach, you will be in control, because for such a long time, I felt that I wasn't in control. And being a bit of a control freak in my life and in the work that I do, I really found that a very difficult part of the process. So you become more confident in your reading, in your arguments, in your ability to exclude rather than include. And feeling out of control is unfortunately part of the process. And I do believe you have to get used to feeling that. So you also have to take risks, and I've taken a few risks, and that is to follow my own creative and intuitive spirit. For example, I use the terms agent collaborateurs, part of the French feminist strategy within my work, rather than participants. It was a very relevant choice, and when I finished my thesis, that will become absolutely clear. And I believe added context to this synergistic feminist approach that I implemented. My personal development intellectually, as well as conceptually, has been significant and incredibly rewarding. I now even challenge authorities and authors, indicating I'm going to use this piece of their work, but I'm going to disagree with that. And I never thought I'd ever get to that stage, because half the time I never understood what they were actually saying. I do now, in the main. I can argue my point with my supervisors in a way I did not think possible earlier in the process. And they also challenge me to even push further through what I've been experiencing. And there's nothing more rewarding than comments like, you show great understanding of the theory, you present convincing arguments, and comments treat you as if you are on a higher plane of intellectual capability than previously. And that for me was incredibly rewarding, especially given that I have 8 years ago, I went through cancer, breast cancer, and I was on very heavy duty chemo drugs. And I thought at that time I would never, ever be able to open my mouth, speak properly, or think properly again in my life because of the chemo fog. So I really find that this is proving something to me on a very, very almost existential level. I've also built my own library of resources. Those aren't my books, by the way. I have many, many, many more books than what's shown there. But it's actually added and contributed to my sense of capability. I can understand now what I had no understanding of during my first 18 months or so. And some of you might find that hard to believe, but hey, it's the truth. I've also contributed significantly to deforestation. I know not politically correct to say that or to acknowledge it, but it's true, because I'm old school and I love being able to underline my key elements in my books. So click. This is the third to last slide, and it's real quick. I came across this quote within the first 12 months, click, and thought it served me well. I have it on my wall in my study, and I only realised its truth when I hit my second year mark. Perhaps I'm a slow learner. During the course of producing my PhD, I came to understand that the expectations of academic rigour and research required time, isolating time, lost in textbooks, alone in libraries, my library, lost in my head conversations with white male theorists, some of whom have passed but are still speaking, especially from a feminist perspective, trying to apply newfound concepts, playing with words and meanings. This was my first interrogation of the literature, and it's not ever going to be the last. And what I click, if you can move on. I'm finally at the point, I think, when I get that it's a philosophy degree, I can draw on my intellect for my academic approach, and I am a feminist, which took me 60 odd years to get there, but I'm here. And I want to leave you with a final word that I always finish most of my presentations on, click. And you'll see that will come up a very beautiful little girl. And this is my third of my 4 grandchildren. She's actually here in the US. I have 2 in Australia who are in their teens and 2 who are here and who are 4 and 2. She's now the 4-year-old. But most important is the passion that this lifetime of real experience carries with it, which desires me to understand the role difference has made in my life and to leave a real legacy so that my granddaughter, who at the time of writing was 2, will not look up in 60 years dissatisfied and ask why and why me, as her grandmother does now. She too, a child of difference, born the child of 2 countries and multiple cultures, and a woman seeking wholeness. Because this was part of my introduction. This is part of my introduction to my thesis. And it's my commitment to leaving a legacy to the work I have committed to, and importantly, not to lose sight of my purpose and my commitment to my PhD research. It is not just about getting it done, but staying true to a course that plays games with your mind and confidence, and from which you can emerge better than you commenced, with the 3 C's of certainty, confidence, and clarity. And click. Questions, discussions. I know I'm out of time and I'm sorry.
Yeah, we probably have time for one question if anyone has it. But first of all, can we have a round of applause, please? I do apologise for the technical issues.
I'd just like working perfectly against 15 minutes.
Denise, I'd just like to make a quick comment. This is Alison here. We had a few email exchanges in organisations, so nice to see you. As a fellow feminist post-structuralist, I'm really pleased at that fantastic presentation and your development over time. I guess right at the start you said you weren't a feminist, but you were studying gender in the work, leadership in the workplace, and I'm going to go, what? And then you said women are inferior, and it's like, holy cow, you got my attention there. And then you move right through and you showed us how you've developed on and you declare yourself as a feminist now. So a very powerful presentation. I also loved your agent collaborator as a description of your participants, and that's also kind of draws from that feminist of mutual reciprocity rather than colonising our participants. So well done and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If anyone has any other questions about your presentation, what would be the best way for them to contact you, Denise? Can Alison pass on an email?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Everyone's got an email.
Okay, great. And I'd love if people want to. I said it's a lonely place. You guys, many of you are lucky. You can, see each other or meet onto different campus at different points and everything else. But working remotely and so far away, it can be a very, very lonely experience. So if anyone is happy to have a chat, I'm more than happy to have a chat.
Thank you. All right. We have run over, but that's okay. So there is morning tea in the marquee, just out between here and where eventually we will have lunch. But we will be coming back for I'm pretty sure it's an 11 a.m. for the second session, just so that we can keep our day on track. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Well done.